Welcome to the premiere episode of PowerTalk. I'm your host, Tom Power. Before we get started, I'd like you to smash that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content from PowerTalk. My guest today is my very good friend, Jesse Stirling. Jesse is the owner of Stirling Studios. He's also the senior editor of Nobleman magazine. He is the producer and host of the interview show Meetings with Remarkable People, which airs on Sundays at 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Canada's superstation NTV. And he has done over 350 interviews over the past 2 decades. Jesse has also produced short films, including In Search of a New Age. Jesse was also the vice president of sales and programming from 1999 to 2009. He also has a Bachelor of Communication, Religious Studies, and a Bachelor of Arts, Communication and Media Studies from the University of California, San Diego. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Tom. It is such an honor to be on the premiere episode of your interview show. I know this has been a dream of yours for a while, and a lot of people talk, and you did it. So I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. You and I have known each other now for well over 10 years. We met through the Janeway Telethon when NTV took over as to producing the show. How has your experience with the telethon been over the last number of years as a host?
Well, the Janeway Telethon is very near and dear to my heart and my family's heart, because it's funny, NTV got the rights to produce and broadcast the Janeway Telethon just before my grandfather died. And that's probably how a lot of your viewers and a lot of especially Newfoundlanders and Labradorians would know me, is I'm Jeff Stirling's grandson. Jeff Stirling was a guy who invented 24-hour television, hung out with John Lennon, founded NTV and Oz FM. So essentially, he was really on his deathbed when he found out that NTV had the right or the opportunity to broadcast the Janeway Telethon. He said, "Do it, buddy. It's a really good thing." So we've always looked to give back to the community. The Janeway Hospital is a local children's hospital in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. And it's, to be really honest, it's a gut-wrenching weekend because you're seeing sick kids, you're seeing the parents of sick kids. So on one hand, it's very emotionally draining. And on the other hand, it's incredibly uplifting and inspiring because it's Newfoundlanders and Labradorians helping each other. And I think that's what we do best. We all take care of each other. And yeah, been about 10 years now since I've been involved with it and been lucky enough to be one of the hosts. And it definitely, I have a 6-year-old little girl named Olivia, and it hits a lot different. When you're a parent, you can empathize more with this ordeal that the parents are going through. But I'll just close saying it's always been the ethos and the philosophy of our company, Newfoundland Broadcasting, to give back to the community. And even the masthead of the Newfoundland Herald, our whole media empire started with the Newfoundland Herald back in 1946. And the motto was, if you abuse power, you lose it. But if you don't use power, you also lose it. So it's how do you use that power in a good way, not abusing it, but helping the community and giving back to the community.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I know NTV has been giving back to the community and Oz FM and the Newfoundland Herald for a very long time. And you guys are very active in the community, and your hosts and all are very active and very well known in the community. I know one in particular is very popular, and that's Eddie Shear. Eddie's very popular.
Great buddy of mine. I mean, even it's the Teddy Toss at Christmas time when we work with the Salvation Army and the local hockey team to raise bears, teddy bears for kids who aren't going to get anything for Christmas. And we package them with necessities like blankets and food and other things like that. But the thought of a kid not getting anything at Christmas time, I just thought, not in this province. So again, it's not me. It's not me coming up with the event. It's the response of the province, which is what's so heartwarming. So we're always looking for ways to give back.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the things I do know about you is that you went to high school here in St. John's. How was your high school experience in the province?
Well, I got to say that for me, Newfoundland is the best place in the world. It's interesting that I was born in San Francisco. I have an American passport, and yet I've spent more than half of my life in St. John's. And when I moved back to California in 2009, I currently split my time between Newfoundland, Toronto, and Los Angeles. Anyway, in 2009, I thought it was going to be this real feeling of homecoming, and I made it home. I made it back to California. And I just felt like a Newfoundlander who was displaced, a tourist in California. So I'm a Newfoundlander at heart. And it started during summers of my youth. One of my first memories is playing in a tide pool in Torbay, a piece of land that my grandfather owns called Motion. It's beautiful, right by the East Coast Trail. And that beautiful Newfoundland fresh air and those really formative summers of my youth, literally my first memories. My high school, I couldn't have had a better group of friends. And I think at that age, I also went to junior high there, I.J. Sampson and Bishop's College. You're so impacted by your friends. And I was always a guy who was very content to get, A's, A minuses in school, coast by on what I considered to be, some aptitude scholastically. And I remember I got a 90 on a math test and I was happy with that. And my buddy Mark Penny said to me, 90? That test was really easy. You should have gotten 100. And I thought, oh, wow. And that concept never even occurred to me. It's like going the extra mile and doing all the homework. And it was this beautiful competitive spirit between me and my very best friends. Andrew Facey is another guy who still lives in the province. And we all wanted to get 100 on every test. And so it was this beautiful peer pressure, but in the best possible way, not to be naughty, but to excel at school. And also, I think I would have been too shy to play sports. I'm not a really gifted natural athlete. I'm not a big guy or anything, but my friends encouraged me, hey, try out for the soccer team. And I eventually ended up winning MVP in grade 11. Try out for basketball. Even though I was a total bench warmer, the third string point guard, the fact that I did it and was part of the team and the team spirit, I learned so much through those experiences of teamwork, self-sacrifice and cooperation and all that good stuff. Mainly my takeaway from high school, though, was just what a pure and beautiful place Newfoundland was. I remember our principal coming on the intercom system. We have the little morning announcements, and he gave a big lecture one day about the litter. And the litter of our school is out of control. And if you see a piece of litter, bend down and pick it up. Have some pride in your school. And I've thought back about that. Like, if that's the biggest problem with your high school is litter, you have a pretty clean-cut environment you're living in. Down here in California, there's drugs and gangs and weapons and cocaine, like, really hard problems in junior high schools and high schools. So unfortunately, some of those modern problems are making their way into Newfoundland. We're seeing drug use, crime, homelessness. When I grew up there in high school in the 80s, it was really like a very nostalgic, wonderful, friendly vibe in the province. And that's probably why I consider myself a Newfoundlander forever. Those formative years of my youth.
Yeah, I actually know one of your teachers, Alan Neal.
Oh, Mr. Neal, math teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I know him quite well, actually. He's a Shriner.
Wonderful guy.
I'm a Shriner, so we kind of connected. So
very nice. Yeah, I mean, another memory of high school, just laughing all the time. I mean, not my proudest moment, but I remember I got kicked out of his math class for laughing and just got the giggles. And we know when someone tells you to stop laughing, it makes you want to laugh even more. And he was cool about it and kicked me and another buddy out of the class and let us calm down, and we came back in. So sorry, Mr. Neal, for that. But that's that little memory shows it just so much happiness, so much togetherness. Some people talk about high school as the most awful time of their life, and they were bullied. And I just had a great group of friends and a great group of people that went to Bishop College during that specific time.
Well, it's good. You're also the senior editor for Nobleman magazine. Can you tell our viewers exactly what Nobleman magazine is and who your target audience is for this publication?
Sure. So it's kind of my side hustle. My real job is NTV and hosting a TV show. And I also own a company called Stirling Studios. I make short films, travel around the world. But my side hustle is this really cool magazine I'm involved with that also it's a magazine, but it really is a content creation company because they do video creation. They do a lot of stuff online. They have a very popular website, gets about 30,000 people visiting it per day. Started by my sister and my brother-in-law. And the reason my sister was able to start a successful magazine, one, I think is in our genes. She was copying our grandfather who started it all, mentioned with the Newfoundland Herald back in 1946. My sister was actually on that show, The Real Housewives of Orange County, which is millions and millions of viewers. So she used that little 2-year stint. And I think it was pretty stressful for her. She's a pretty soft-hearted and nice person, Christian at heart. There's a lot of drama, shall I say, manufactured or real on that show. So she took the 2 years, was appreciative, but it built her name and fame up so that she could launch something. She knew she wanted to do something with her name and fame. So she wrote a couple books, like Bible study books, really inspirational stuff. But the real crown jewel of the empire that she's built, along with her husband, Doug McLaughlin, my sister, Lydia McLaughlin, is this magazine called Nobleman Magazine. So it's a luxury lifestyle magazine, mostly for men. It's all men on the cover. It's all watches and yachts and that kind of stuff. But of course, women want to check it out too. There's gift guides and things to buy your husbands. And I like to call it, the magazine is inspirational and aspirational. So part of it is, it might inspire you to go treat yourself to a nice pocket square for $50. But then there's some things that hardly anyone on the planet could afford that are showcased in there, like 10 billion-dollar yachts, super yachts. I think there was $100,000 toilet that all the latest technology. So it's just kind of fun to see the lifestyles of the uber wealthy and what they're doing. Most of all, it's the substance of it. I really like that it's got some integrity behind it. It's not a sexy or racy or vulgar magazine. It's got some real, just the word nobleman. What is a noble man? It speaks to honesty, integrity, and strength. And I came up with the tagline, which they use sometimes, because being a gentleman never goes out of style. And you yourself are a sharp dresser and you have great manners. We know, yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that as well.
Feel comfortable, yeah. So I love working for that publication, and I don't really make a lot of money doing it, but what I do get is these great perks. So my sister will call me up and say, hey, do you have a couple days where you can do a travel review? So I'll get to travel somewhere unique and then write about it. Also food reviews. I've done a couple dozen food reviews at this by now. I think I've been doing it about 12 years. And at my first food review, I remember thinking, I know how to write and I've eaten at a lot of restaurants, but like, does the chef know that I have no idea what I'm doing? And slowly over the years, and after doing several dozen of these reviews, you really do learn the jargon of the industry. You learn to take, your taste becomes more developed. You can deconstruct sauces and all that in your mouth. And so I love doing food reviews. I'm a huge eater. I love eater. Unfortunately, I inherited on my mom's side, her grandfather was from Italy. So I love eating. I have a big sweet tooth. So I love the food reviews. So will do most of their food, travel, and celebrity interviews. I've done, done almost like 400 or 450 or something celebrity interviews at this point. So I love meeting with famous people and figuring out, not asking boring questions, but really figuring out what makes them tick. So yeah, that's the nobleman piece in my life.
Okay, cool. Sounds interesting. You also host and produce meetings with remarkable people. And from what I know, you have interviewed some truly remarkable people. I know I myself was honored to have been a guest on your show, and I still talk about it. Still, I'm so honored that you asked me. Can you tell our viewers how you got started doing that show and what your experience has been?
Well, thanks. A great question. The most unexpected part of my career, for sure, because as you mentioned earlier with my very nice introduction, I was just really a broadcast executive, and I bought the shows for NTV, and I did a lot of marketing stuff like the Oz Winter Circle program and promoted concerts and the George Street Festival, that kind of stuff. And my main job was selling. I did local sales. I did national sales. I even did some international sales in the Bahamas where NTV is carried. So I was really like the guy who wore a suit and tie into work and was in the making money business and promoting our brands. And my grandfather had this one author he really liked. Again, it usually comes back to my grandfather, Jeff. I find I talk about him a lot on my own show, and here I am talking about him again. There was this author he really liked named David Icke, Icke, and he billed himself as the world's most dangerous conspiracy theorist because he actually got banned in a few countries only for asking questions. He was not advocating any kind of revolution or violence or anything like that. Just by asking questions, some of his books got banned. And I thought, that's interesting. So my grandfather gave me a ton of his books. And to be honest, my late 20s, I wasn't at the point in life I was ready to get my head around that stuff. A few years later, I said, what are these books about? And so I read a couple of them. My mind was blown. And there's no big secrets in them. It's basically like everything that we kind of feel in our hearts, that sometimes bankers can be a little bit corrupt and sometimes politics can be a little bit rigged. And here's exactly why it is so. And here's tracing it back hundreds of years to basically the super powerful people and families in the world that control it all. It's mind-blowing stuff. But I thought, wow, I like this. I don't understand all of it. So I'm going to see if I can get this guy, David Icke, up to Newfoundland into NTV studios and have a chat with him. So used my own money, used my Aeroplan points, flew him from America up to Newfoundland, and ended up getting like 13 hours of content with him. I'd ask a question, and he would just talk for like, just kind of like me as a talker. He'd just talk for like 45 minutes straight. And I showed it to my grandfather, and I think I wanted to prove to him, like, I'm capable of doing projects on my own. No one asked me to do this. I'm using the resources. This is content you like. I'm kind of making it just for you. Much to my surprise, he aired it, and he aired it overnight. And a couple weeks later, and at that point too, I should mention, I was doing guest appearances for CTV. On Monday nights, I would do a little show called The Chat Room. It was on a station that no longer exists called Talk TV. And my co-hosts were Seamus O'Regan, Justin Trudeau, Ben Mulrooney. Like, they all made it pretty good. So a good co-host to have. So he'd seen me do that piece too, where I would just talk for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes about what was going on in Newfoundland. So I had a tiny bit of on-air experience. But anyway, finally to the point of your question. One day my grandfather walked in my office and he goes, you know, buddy, I think you're ready to host a TV show. And it's going to be called Meetings with Remarkable People. There you go. And he even had the time slot picked out. Very nice, low pressure time slot. It's 11:30 a.m. Sunday mornings on NTV. And he's mentioned 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And my gosh, that was back 22 years ago. And my first guest of that show was Alan Doyle from Great Big Sea. I don't even know if he knew he was going to be a guest on my show. He was talking about some charity endeavors, and it just led into a long form half-hour interview. And suddenly, before I knew it, my second guest was a CTV comedian who's on that show Corner Gas, Brent Butt. And it just, it was good enough. I was pretty rough back in the day. I see how nervous I was on air back then. But it just, the little show that kept chugging along. And I do all the producing myself, meaning I contact the guests, I write the questions, and get all the editing done, and I'm the host. And so here it is now. And I 22 seasons, and I think it's up to about 450 episodes. It's the little show that could. And I should mention, it's on NTV Plus a lot. And it's this new really cool venture that NTV is launching. Besides our regular broadcast channel, there's an app, NTV, and then the plus sign, and it has all the local Newfoundland content on it. Basically, all the stuff we have digital streaming rights for. So my show's on there a lot, and that's picked up a whole new audience of itself. So what I find amazing is a lot of weeks I have more people watching me off the island than on the island. There's that expression, there's more Newfoundlanders off the island than on the island from everyone moving away. So I'm always very honored and flattered that people watch. There's about 30,000 devoted local weekly viewers. And of course, they can see clips as well. I have a Facebook group, Jesse Stirling's Meetings with Remarkable People. And I have a YouTube page, Stirling Studios, and there's all sorts of free clips there. So very appreciative for the opportunity to keep doing it, because if there's no viewers, there's no show. So always very startled and humbled when people watch.
And I have to say myself, it's an amazing show. I watch it every Sunday, so
Thank you.
it's
Thank you. I try to
fantastic.
not attack, just like you're doing right now. You're creating a friendly vibe and giving me plenty of space to talk. I try to do the same thing with my guests. I remember seeing those like 60-minute type Barbara Walter interviews where they ask the tough questions and they make the viewer, they make the guest really uncomfortable. The gotcha journalism. They want to get them in a moment. And as a viewer, as a kid, I always felt really uncomfortable during those moments. I always wanted to change the channel. Like,
Yeah.
I have a very non-confrontational show. I'm there to neither attack nor defend my guest. And some people say, you ask kind of easy questions, Jesse. You don't really ask the killer questions. And I say, well, that's the whole plan of it. It's called Meetings with Remarkable People. I want to let the guest look remarkable and at least provide a neutral forum for them in an unhurried manner to tell their answers and tell their stories. So it's fun. It's a fun opportunity.
Yeah. And okay. I know you're very spiritual and you go to India and spend time doing meditation and other spiritual undertakings. Can you talk a moment about your meditation and your travels to India?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I grew up in a really interesting family where spirituality wasn't compartmentalized into like an hour and a half on Sunday. Not that there's anything wrong with going to church. I still go to church myself, but I think that you either think that nothing is spiritual in life or everything has to be spiritual. God is everywhere, so to speak. And my core beliefs would be oneness, meaning everyone's equal. The light making my eyes shine is the exact same making your eyes shine. We're in different containers, these earthly little suits we wear called bodies. But yeah, you look into the eye of a dead man and there's no light there. So it's not the eye that's creating the light, it's consciousness. So I believe very much in unity, oneness, and love. You read the teachings of Jesus Christ, and really the whole message is love, love, love. Love thyself. If you love thyself, you can love your neighbor. Most importantly, love God. And what is God? God can be nature. God can be consciousness, holy consciousness, unborn, unchanging, undying. It can get really out there, but I don't believe God is, a man with a beard sitting up there on a cloud. Like God is flowing every day through nature, through every human on the planet. And so how India tied into it is if my grandfather wasn't an interesting enough cat, kind of making this media enterprise. At one point, he even had a radio station in Arizona. He had stations in Ottawa, Montreal, and Windsor, and of course, many in Newfoundland, and TV stations and magazines and all these ventures. His daughter died when she was 18, my Aunt Kim. And I have only a few memories of her, but they were all very positive. She was the aunt you always wanted to be around. And Jeff, my grandfather, kind of came to the conclusion, wow, I didn't spend enough time with my daughter as I should have. I haven't spent enough time with my family as I should have. Talk about balance in life. He'd always joke, I wasn't the type to like take the family fishing or go on a week vacation. The man worked 18 hours a day. So he kind of wanted to find out what's the meaning of life. I've kind of done a lot in the business world. I have a family. I don't know what it's all about. And at that time, the Beatles were starting to go to India, and he always really admired and looked up to the Beatles. And so he set out on his own. And through his son, my dad, Scott Stirling, he was living in Vancouver at the time, a total hippie. He said, hey, this is my grandfather talking, hey, buddy, to my dad and his best friend, Dan Chernin from boarding school in Nova Scotia. Do you know any Indian gurus? And funny enough, just a couple days earlier, my dad had got the phone number off a poster of someone from India who taught yoga and a little bit of meditation. And that guy, Swami Sham, ended up really, really having a powerful moment with my grandfather. They did something called an eye meditation, which I don't know if my grandfather invented it or not, but my grandfather's a pretty tough dude. And so I think he wanted to see if this guy, Swami Sham, was legit or not. So he like looked into his eyes and seconds turned into minutes. And suddenly it's 20 minutes. And the way my dad describes it, Jeff's got like tears running down his eyes and snot running down, but he's still looking at him. And then the gaze melts and something happened where it won my grandfather over. And he said, this is the most enlightened man I've ever met in my life. Will you come to my radio station in Montreal and bless it? So they flew on a private jet the next day. Swamiji, there's a whole story in that. I'll make it really short. Talked to an audience of something like 140,000 housewives in Montreal. And the morning man is saying, this is not the forum. This is a very straight-laced radio program. This is not the audience you want. Look, I'll put him on the overnight. Jeff's like, no, this is an important message. Just from being on the air 15 or 20 minutes, taking calls, suddenly he said, let's have an event that night. Hundreds of people showed up. And suddenly this guy, Swami Sham, had dozens and dozens of followers, French Canadian, other Canadian, and eventually ended up founding an ashram in northern India. So that's how he said, okay, we've got all these followers, and they traveled around the world and picked up people from the Netherlands and Brazil, like Israel, amazing, England, France, all over the world. At the peak, I think there were 600 people. But they needed a place to congregate. And so they traveled all across India. My grandfather, my dad, Swami Sham and Dan Chernin, found a nice piece of land up in the northern Himalayas where the temperature was nice and cool. And they just thought, this is the place. And this Swamiji always had a vision of what it would look like underneath a tree with a river and the mountains in the background. He said, this is it. This is the place I've always envisioned. And so that's how India folds into my life. I had my 5th and 7th birthdays on that ashram, and I've been back so many times, and it's a beloved to me. But I always do stress, even though it is nice to go on a spiritual retreat or yoga retreat, to meditate, you don't have to go anywhere. It's free, and you can do it right in your home. And it's 3 really, really easy steps. You sit comfortably, like I'm doing right now. Don't worry about perfectly cross-legged or holding your hands a certain way. Just sit comfortably to start. Close your eyes. Take a couple deep breaths if that feels good. And then you just feel the space. And you never force it. I think some people beat themselves up because I could only do that for a minute. I could only do that for 2 minutes. And you say, good. That is so great that you gave your nervous system a rest for a couple minutes. We're go, go, go all day. So just to sit and rest the eyes that work so hard for us, and rest the body and rest the brain, you've already done great work. Like any practice, as you practice meditation more and more, those times that you sit should get longer and longer. I myself do 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at the evening. When I'm over in India, it tends to be more like 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, but it's not a spiritual egoism thing. It doesn't matter. Just check in with yourself, be kind with yourself, take a couple minutes here and there to dive into that ocean of peace, connect to that feeling of oneness. I always like the term, make God your best friend. Just take a couple moments to think about God, think about the universe, make God your best friend. Prayer is talking to God. Meditation is listening to God. And I guarantee if you do this, anyone watching this right now, if you really try this and do this, sit there, close the eyes, it'll be hard. Your brain will keep saying, oh, just answer this email first. Just get a glass of water first. Just scratch your ear first. Then you'll relax. Your brain is always going to try to trick you to not sit there and do nothing. But if you do give yourself a couple moments to slide into that ocean of peace that's pure, free forever, you're going to feel great. And for me, it changed my life. I have a tendency to maybe go towards depression, go towards worry, a lot of anxiety. And I feel like it's a tool that I have in my toolkit now that really helps me get back to a baseline of peace. And a last thing I'll mention is breathing and how important breath work is in the whole thing. When we're stressed, when we're anxious, our breathing gets really shallow, like a rabbit, kind of in, out, in, out, in, out, chest breathing. But we can actually trick and force our bodies into relaxing. You have those deep, full breaths, full exhales, Deeper breathing equals deeper thoughts. Shallow breathing is usually means shallow thinking. So just I'll end with what my grandfather said again. I love this. Meditation is no more complex than doing this. You grab a seat, have a nice couple sips of water, close your eyes, take 7 deep breaths, and love yourself as much as you can. Close your eyes, take 7 deep breaths, and love yourself as much as you can. I promise you'll feel better. I don't know how many people out there are going to try it, but I promise, even if just one person tries it because of this interview, it'll have been so worth it. So I challenge you to try it and you'll love it.
I'm definitely going to try it myself.
Great. I never thought I'd be the guy talking about meditation. I also want to make that clear. I was, again, a very serious little kid, and I was the businessman who wore a suit. And the last thing I thought I would be doing is on a podcast talking about how to meditate. I thought I'd be on a podcast talking about how to make a sale or how Canadian media works. So I find it just as startling as anyone that I'm here talking about meditation and inner peace. But if you practice something long enough, you do become it. So it's just practice. None of us are perfect. You just start with small steps. And you love yourself. And if you love yourself, then you can love others.
Well, Jesse, I want to thank you for coming on my show today. And as always, it's been a pleasure to spend time with you, even on Zoom. Thank you again. Thank you all for watching.
Love hanging out with you, Tom. Love hanging out with you, buddy. Yeah, you're going to do great things with this podcast. I'm so proud of you. I'm so honored to be your first guest. And thank you, man. One of many, many to come.
Thank you, my friend. Anyway, thank you all for watching. And again, please smash that like button and subscribe if you would like to get more content like this from PowerTalk. Have a great day and be happy. And as Jesse said, try meditation. You'll love it.